down, escorted him out of the building.
Yeah, that we discussed that in the first show for sure. So yeah, get that guy out of there.
Yeah, Rocky, you gotta stay on track here, man. You can't go back to the first show after the second show, okay? You're also coming back. You're like, you know what? I had pizza. I had pizza last night. It tasted really good. Not to change the subject, but I also have a bunion on my foot, and it hurts when I walk. All right.
Thank you.
Staying on track.
So we got Team Raw against Team SmackDown on the men's side now. This is the main attraction for the Survivor Series part of the show as far as teams. We got Dolph Ziggler, Drew McIntyre, Braun Strowman, Finn Balor, and Bobby Lashley, led by Baron Corbin with Lio Rush in the corner of Lashley, and then they're facing the Team SmackDown of The Miz, captaining Shane McMahon with him, the commissioner of SmackDown, Rey Mysterio, Samoa Joe, and Jeff Hardy. Another weirdly booked match there, folks. Samoa Joe, one of my favorite wrestlers in this group, eliminated immediately by Drew McIntyre. And that set the tone for me on this match. I don't know about you.
Totally set the tone for me. I think Samoa Joe should have got eliminated right away because his name sounds like a candy bar. That's what I always think to myself. When I think of Samoa Joe, I think of a candy bar. So... I'm just trying to add my 2 cents in this. Because,
the Girl Scout cookie, Samoa's? Is that what you're thinking of?
There you go. Yeah, Samoa Joe, the Girl Scout cookie. That's what it is. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like a cookie. And anything else, it's like, should he really have his shirt off? At least Big Show wears like a singlet from the old circus days or something and tries to cover up a little bit. Samoa Joe, he just comes out in full Samoa Joe, and it's like, yeah,
he don't give a shit. Yeah,
it doesn't even look like he lifts. I think he just puts on his trunks and comes out and works the match. And am I not mistaken? Did he not work some matches in Arizona? MC, wasn't he around during that time when they had the Mountain High Wrestling or whatever the hell was up here with did Samoa Joe not make some appearances?
He was in Cali for UPW, I think, is where he started with John Cena. I don't think he did a whole lot of work in Arizona. Your fellow comedian Dolph Ziggler, he was in this match, but
yeah, I saw Dolph at a comedy show. I actually performed with him, and actually wasn't performing with him. It was the time that Mick Foley fucking bumped me from the show because he brought Dolph and because some asshole other guy he brought an announcer to open.
We're gonna tear open old wounds here on me podcast.
Well, I performed with Mick Foley, and I hate to tell you, but people after the show said, it appears that you're a comedian and Mick Foley's not, and that's exactly what it is. He's a wrestler, but. When I was on this show,
is a storyteller, I think.
Yeah, well, very not very good at storytelling either. He's very bad at it. Oh. He just wants to talk about Mr. Sacco and all shit. So they bring out Dolph Ziggler, who does comedy. I'm assuming. I've never seen him perform, but he did. He talked about wrestling too. But they had the guy open up, Justin or whatever his name is, the announcer, had to open the show.
Roberts.
Yeah, and he's not a comedian at all. None of these guys were comedians, and they came to a comedy club to perform comedy, and I get it. I'm a comedian. I'm not a wrestler. None of the people in there were looking for comedy. It probably was a good move to bump me from the show, but it fucking pissed me off because I showed up. I was wearing my championship belt. I was wearing my trunks. I had my boots laced up. I was ready to go. And then when I walked out of the dressing room, they said, just to let you know, we're going to cancel your appearance because nobody knows who the fuck you are. And nobody even wants to see you tell your jokes. So just go sit down and have a beer. And so I did, and it was okay. I mean, everything was taken care of on my end. But I'll just tell you, it kind of pissed me off because you just don't book me for a show and then decide that I just don't fit into the whole wrestling thing. Because you know what I probably would have added to that show? Comedy. So it probably would have been funny.
I picture you like a sad puppy dog outside like a storefront or a child looking in the window of the storefront but you can't get in because the store is closed.
No, I wasn't sad. I was actually very angry, and I yelled from the back of the room. I was like, I asked him a question, and yeah, when he tried to answer, and I said, "No one cares what you want to say right now." And then I just stood up on the rails, and then I was like, "If you smell what Jester's cooking," and then I walked out, and then I tripped, and that's what got everybody to laugh. No one laughed about the part I was doing, but it was a sold-out show. I got to tell you that.
Did you flip over any tables on the way out?
I just started sucker punching people like Nina did in the last show you guys talked about. I was just punching people left and right. I'm like, this is part of the show. And I'm like, boom, boom. I'm just hitting people right in the nose. And everybody's like, I think you broke my nose. I said, it's all for the show. Yeah. I even had
Jacks all up on their grills.
And I wore like a monster wristband that I had from my 80s days when I used to do like pot and stuff and walked around. I just started punching people in the face, and I'm like, yeah, screw you, and had spikes on it. And then I don't have any hair, so I had to put on a wig, like a mullet, and I was wearing my Striper T-shirt because I was part of a Christian school, so I wanted to wear my Striper rock and roll shirt to represent the Christians, and so that's what I did. So I forget what we're talking. Oh yeah, so Dolph Ziggler. So this gets back to the story. So he was sitting on a stool, and he's a pretty decent sized guy, but I thought he was taller. But when he stood up, it looked like he was still sitting on the stool. That's pretty much the size of him. Now I'm 6'2", so I'm not small, but when you see him on TV, I was just thinking about the other day when I saw him on there. He looks fairly big, but that's the problem with TV, man. They make everybody look super huge. And one thing I will say about Dolph, though, he's a good character, excellent wrestler, and he's got a huge frickin' neck. His neck is probably as wide as his head. It just looks like that picture they've been pulling around on Facebook with that black guy's neck, just looking like it's just a huge neck. I think Dolph Ziggler has the same size neck. Big old neck on that dude.
Yeah,
super cool guy,
he's a legit collegiate wrestler. I think, Kent State? He's a legit wrestler, so yeah, it's not surprising he would have a thick neck from his wrestling days.
Super popular in Arizona, super nice guy. Nothing against him. I've seen him do comedy, and like I said, he tells stories, and wrestling fans do know him and they do love him, and he's super cool. And the one thing I just recently saw him on was the challenge on MTV, doing the wrap up with the challenge folks from Real World and Road Rules and all that stuff. So I think that's funny because the last one they had was The Miz. So I don't know why MTV uses wrestlers for these shows, but they do.
Yeah.
Not change subject. Yeah. All right, go back to the match. Okay, boom. Action.
Yes. So, yeah, that's...
Thank you for your opinion there.
Good segue.
Yeah, just to let you know, though, just to let you know, never get on a show. And by the way, I might be performing with Jake the Snake sometime in the future, so I love wrestlers. I love the stories that they tell.
He gives you a DDT.
Dude, I want him to take a snake and put it on me, and then I want it to bite me, and then I want to be like, ah, and I want everybody to film it.
Yeah, that would be great. So this match, going back to our wonderful segue.
Yeah, we only have like 7 more minutes, so you better wrap it up here, Mr. Match. Are we gonna have episode 3?
No, you're counting us down now. So this one was another Raw victory, which basically almost single-handedly Braun Strowman gets the victory for his team. Which...
Not just a Raw victory, but 3-0. You have 3 guys left on the Raw brand. SmackDown had. So in other words, this is supposed to be what Survivor Series is all about. This match right here. This is the whole pay-per-view build-up. And SmackDown's elitist, right? Because that's the whole build-up. It's supposed to be the best of Raw versus the best of SmackDown. And the best of SmackDown can only take down 2 guys. And Raw just completely dominates.
And why Shane McMahon won the best in the world, I still don't understand where that storyline's going. It's still in its infant stages with The Miz. I'm assuming it's still trying to get The Miz over as a babyface. Randy Orton, one of the most vicious competitors on SmackDown, left off this team. They could have furthered the storyline with Rey Mysterio, which they continued on SmackDown, but instead they chose to have Shane in his place. Ends up being The Miz encouraging Shane to do another coast to coast, which he calls it, the old Rob Van Dam Van Terminator he stole. So Shane goes across the ring. I believe he eliminates Ziggler with it. Then he tries to do it on Lashley, I think it was. And then he ends up getting intercepted by Braun Strowman, who clocks him in the head. He ends up being pinned. Eventually, SmackDown, like you said, loses 3-0. This is notable for the cheap shot afterwards, where Baron Corbin hits who's in a big feud, even bigger now, with Braun Strowman, clobbering him from behind. And this is the start of a new faction, apparently. Dolph looks like he might be on the outside looking in on this, because it seems to be Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley with Leo Rush, and Baron Corbin as the leader of this faction here that is basically an anti-Strowman, and they're messing with Finn Balor now and Elias, who wasn't on this pay-per-view or on this team either, but that's what's happening on Raw now. So it looks like this was solely done to show the dominance of Raw, but set up a faction and a force to be reckoned with for Raw. So I believe this puts SmackDown down 4-0 officially, review portion of it.
4-0 on the pay-per-view portion. Yeah. So the next step we got, what most people want to hear about is the Raw Women's Championship match. Ronda Rousey, the champion, facing SmackDown Charlotte Flair. This is definitely one of the best matches on the card. Extremely physical, and I got to give it up to Ronda Rousey. You know, the last show I was on, or maybe 2 shows ago, we kind of bashed Rousey a little bit for her inexperience in the ring. Having Charlotte Flair in there, the more experienced wrestler, these two really tore the house down. The match was extremely physical. Unfortunately, it ended up in a no contest. Obviously, in hopes that that's going to build a future rematch between these two.
Yeah, I thought Becky would interfere and lay them both out. I thought maybe she could still do that, but apparently they didn't even want her doing anything physical, so they turned it for a reason not only to promote that future match, as you discussed here, which could be WrestleMania, you never know, but also it kind of changed the character of Charlotte Flair, who was being booed opposite Becky Lynch, to a tweener, almost heel role, attacking Ronda, even though Ronda was the one being booed, and they cheered Charlotte beating her with a kendo stick. Believe it or not, that really happened. But
I gotta say though, I think the arm bars from Ronda is getting a little old too. I'm getting sick of watching her do arm bars. It's pretty cool to watch her put people in it, but it gets kind of old to watch it after a while. She does arm bars. She rolls them up in arm bars and then punches the shit out of them. So that's the part I thought is getting kind of old watching that match. But I do gotta say that match was entertaining to watch. The people were the kendo stick part with it, that was cool to watch.
It was vicious. It was definitely a brutal, almost disturbingly intense beatdown afterwards, to the point where you could see the welts all over her arm, and they made it, as legit as they could with that. That was they laid it in. That's something that the purists would want to see. They did a good job there. It was a very very disturbing, I guess, at points to watch, but it was you couldn't look away like a car crash, and it definitely it sets a tone for a future rematch, no doubt.
But there was no broken
Ronda
noses.
Nobody punched in the face, real, yes.
Ronda Rousey, she's the type of competitor that wears her heart on her sleeve, man. She took it. I read somewhere she took it really personally that the fans of California were booing her as she was basically walking up the stage, licking her wounds, and the fans were booing her and cheering Charlotte for beating the hell out of her. I read she was like legitimately upset that she felt the fans betrayed her about that. Do you read anything like that?
I know she looked like that was bothersome, and you kind of feel for them on there, but on the same token, the fans pay their hard-earned money. We all have at one point in time to watch, or we've, a lot of us, the three of us, a lot of the three of us have also been on the other side of that fence, in limited capacities or, one way or the other. So, you can't take that stuff personal. You just, embrace it. The fans are who they are. Personally, I think, from a performance standpoint, I would much rather be booed because I could feed off that better. Just that vibe gives me more energy. Although, I performed in where I've cheered, and that's cool too. But I've also performed in a part where you're supposed to be cheered and the fans start booing you. And the story storyline dictates that you can't act a certain way. So you basically got to take it, and that's can be annoying, but it is what it is. Let's pay their money. They could do it and cheer and boo whoever they want. It's comical to get worked up over it, though. I mean,
so not to cut this short, but